Taliban, who are they? That is a question that a lot of journalists just aren't asking at the moment, while they're covering the drama unfolding in Afghanistan at the moment. The Taliban are a puritanical group of Afghans who were formed in the early 90s. They came together as students of Islam. They had absolutely no ambitions to govern the country. It happened almost by accident, and it was thrust upon them. And so by the 1996, it was rather chaotic. And the Americans, which had been funding the Mujahideen to fight the Soviet occupation, decided to stop funding the Taliban and then set about on quite a slick operation demonizing them, which they did quite successfully. So by the time 2001 arrived and the 9/11 atrocities happened, people had already decided, that the Taliban were a bunch of dangerous religious fanatics. And so when George Bush launched his war on terror after the horrific events of 9/11, few people were really too concerned when the bombings started in Afghanistan. That was back in 2001. The Taliban quickly fell away, but they never completely went away. They started resisting the occupation, and they couldn't have survived 20 years resisting the occupation without popular support on the ground. And I think that that's important to take into consideration. By the time we get to 2021, they're a much more mature organisation, much more media savvy. They've got laptops. They're in the business of communicating. They're starting to understand geopolitics and the need to communicate and network. And as a result, with a combination of one of the most corrupt governments in the world, the Ashraf Ghani government, and with the unwelcome, by now, American occupation, it was very easy for them to march through the country and virtually take it without too much resistance. And there was 75,000 of them in the face of a 300,000 strong, highly trained, highly weaponized Afghan National Army. But the Afghan National Army and the police force just seemed to melt away as the Taliban advanced. And by the time they got to Kabul, they'd taken most of the world by complete surprise. So that's who the Taliban are. They're still, as I say, they're much more media savvy now, much more worldly. The one thing that hasn't changed are their religious beliefs. They're still very puritanical. But to hear them talking about human rights was really astonishing. Not just human rights, but women's rights. They are misogynistic. It's quite true, but don't make the mistake that women hate them, because, as I say, they couldn't have advanced as quickly as they did without popular support. And a lot of women were supporting them. And why people find this strange is beyond me when you consider that the women who are showing their support had husbands, brothers, sons, fathers who were killed, arrested, or brutalized under the US occupation.
Yeah, no, I want to get on to some of the writing you've done there about female support for the Taliban, but I want to go back just a little bit to get like a bit more understanding here of sort of their earlier years, and you mentioned early on they had no ambitions for power. That when in 2001, early on in the campaign, when America and Britain had first arrived, that they kind of fell away and sort of shrunk back, and that it seemed like you were suggesting that the reason that they then became successful was that they were opposed to the occupation, and that from the sounds of things, it sounds like as the Afghani people began to grow more opposed to the occupation, that led to the Taliban gaining more support and power within the country. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right. You know, I've been back to Afghanistan quite a few times, and there's a very famous saying that you can rent an Afghani, but you'll never own one. And they, they're very much their own people. And it's with good reason that Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires, because a lot of empires have been broken while trying to occupy Afghanistan.
Why do you think that is? Like, is there something, is it the geography, the culture, the people?
Well, it's a landlocked country. The people are very strong and tough. Afghanistan is in the heart of the old Silk Road trading route. And I just think historically, they've been very welcoming of visitors. But those visitors who don't leave, they get tired of them quite well. I'm saying quite quickly. It's taken 20 years. But they, it's quite clear they'd had enough of the occupation.
So maybe people don't know very much about yourself or your story initially, and your kind of, I'm not quite how to say it, the interactions with the Taliban themselves. Do you want to give like a bit of a background on yourself and sort of what happened and why you'd written your first book?
Yes. After the horrific events of 9/11, I was sent as the chief reporter of the Sunday Express newspaper to Pakistan, where the world's media was assembled waiting for the war in Afghanistan to start. I decided that I wanted to go into Afghanistan ahead of the war and try and find out a little bit more about the Taliban, because the propaganda was very strong that this was the most evil, brutal regime in the world and that they hated women. So I went into Afghanistan. I was in there for a couple of days, and just in 2 days I was able to blow away some of the media lies which persist today, and that is that the Afghan Taliban did have schools for girls, and girls were educated. So it was, it was all quite interesting and productive. But as I headed back towards the Pakistan border, I was rumbled. I fell off a donkey, actually, and the Taliban arrested me and accused me of being an American spy, some sort of G.I. Jane character, which was laughable, really. And so for the next 11 days, I was held by them. Every day I would wake up and think, is this my last day on earth? It was a terrifying experience, because all the fear was generated from the propaganda that I had listened to and read about them. And, you know, the harrowing scenes that we've seen in Kabul, with people running to the airport, trying to climb on board planes, I see that fear and I recognize it, because that was the fear that I had, you know, oh my God, I'm never going to survive this. But in fact, all the fear was manufactured up here. It was unfounded. Of course, that isn't any consolation to the desperate plight of Afghans who, you know, have had 20 years of this propaganda. It's a very young population in Afghanistan, and many of them can't remember or don't know what life was like under the Taliban, but the stories have gained in the telling, and we can, you know, that panic and that fear, I wouldn't dismiss it at all. It was very real, very palpable, and very sad. So I had this experience, and I genuinely didn't think I would get out alive. So on the grounds that you don't kiss the hand that slaps you, I became the prisoner from hell. And I spat at them, I swore at them, I threw things at them. And their reaction or their response to this was, why are you being like this? We want you to be happy. You are our guest. And I'm thinking, well, why are you being like this? Because you're supposed to be brutal and evil, and why aren't you living up to the job description? So even though they were kind to me and showed me courtesy and respect, I was still terrified, even to the point where they handed me over to the Pakistan authorities, and I walked across no man's land. I got out of the people carrier backwards, and just so I could keep my eye on them, and walked backwards for a while, because I thought as soon as I turn my back, that's when they're going to shoot me. Once I got over to the other side, and people, fellow journalists were saying, how did the Taliban treat you? And I thought about it, and I said, you know, they treated me with courtesy and respect. And then I thought, gosh, I was so badly behaved, and I would have gone back, to apologize. But I think if they saw me going back to their border, they would have shot me, because, you know, my captivity exposed a whole clash of cultures and prejudices on both sides. And it certainly was a life-changing experience for me.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. Don't forget our sponsor, ExpressVPN, and my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, can both be found in the links in the description below. And also, please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. It's the best way to help us grow. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Screw the hedge funds.
You can make as many rules as you want, but if there's no teeth behind them, what's the point?
Well, like Citadel is potentially just gone in a few months. It feels like financial institutions, that they are all laughing at us by buying GME. Screw the hedge funds. Like, I will lose my entire investment if it brings them down.
Why on earth, last May, could you buy the entire company for $200 million?
What's been happening on Reddit and in social media and in the marketplace has never been seen before.
I argue that nothing is off the table. There is nothing off the table when dealing with the volumes of money in something as big as the United States stock market.
The hedge funds have clearly underestimated a group of people raised on Friday night World of Warcraft raids.
Dark pools, they're another mechanism to manipulate and cheat. mainstream journalists don't say these things for a number of reasons. One is their sources are the people that I'm talking about, and so they can't call somebody a crook.
Superstonk and the other communities that have emerged are a hive mind, the likes of which we have never seen before. It's madness and brilliance, insanity and genius all rolled into one. It's very possible that Citadel will be gone in a few months. And not just Citadel, but the entire financial system has the potential to come crashing down. These crooks continue to gamble recklessly with the world economy, and this could be the moment that they finally get their justice.